Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. I will not be joined by my two co-hosts for this surprise Friday episode. The title of tonight's episode is The Royal Clutch, and featuring a good friend of ours, Mr. Sam Fortier from the Washington Post. Thank you so much for joining me on this Friday, Sam. It's been a while. You've had some great news come around, but how are you doing, man?
Doing well. Thank you for having me in the Raw Clutch. We've talked about poker on here, so I do love the episode name. That's a great call.
Well, because we have to get into it, Sam, because you did have that report come out with the Washington Post. I know you talked to Kime about it as well, but it's something that we've been talking about all off season, where it's like those 6 games to end the season, not even just those, but the Hail Mary and everything, it was just miraculous the way that it ended, really. But like in your opinion, is that something that is sustainable?
So you're talking a little bit about the story I wrote, which basically kind of pulls together a lot of the luck elements, and I think that there's some of those things, late game situations, the Hail Mary, injuries, successive one score games. Players talk about how that's not just luck, that's skill. That's investment from ownership with health. That's practicing Hail Mary and installing that. Like those are the things I think that they would argue are not totally luck. And then I talked to basically an NFL data scientist who looked at some other situations we can get into if you want, and he says those are luck where really they have no control. The team has no control over that. But anyway,
Okay.
the data says the Commanders got very lucky last year. And that's not to say they weren't also good. I think that's the thing that a lot of people miss when we talk about this. That was an incredibly talented, skilled, well-coached team. I'm not taking that away at all. But they also, it seems, got lucky in certain situations. And so is that sustainable? Is that repeatable? The data would say it's not. But I talked to players, including Marcus Mariota, Andrew Wiley, some offensive linemen, and they would argue that it's not luck at all, and that it wasn't luck in the first place. And so the only way we can find out is to watch this season.
No, you're absolutely right. Which brings to mind, I had this question written out, and I was like, I should have told Sam before we started recording, but I have a thought in my head and to answer this question. But if there was like a movie reference that you could almost compare that is almost parallel, similar to the Commander season last season, do you have one in mind?
Ooh, that is a good question. Um, I mean, man, like, and how could you not pick like any of the classic sports movies? I don't know why, but like the one that comes to mind is like The Little Giants, which is, like
Okay.
not a great comparison for them because they're, a bunch of professional athletes, but like I do think there was an element last season of like ragtag bunch of misfit castoffs. Obviously, Jaden Daniels doesn't fit that as the number 2 pick, but when you talk about Bobby Wagner being in the twilight of his career, or Zach Ertz being pretty much cast off and then coming here and having the second or third most targets on the team. Like there was an element of, hey, like we think we're a lot better than people think we are, and then surprising a lot of people en route to the NFC Championship game in 12 wins. So, I mean, like any classic sports movie underdog story, like, that's what this really felt like. It felt like a Hollywood movie last year.
I would go down the sci-fi route, and I would pick Star Trek. And being that the Enterprise always found themselves in those kind of situations, and luckily were able to get out in these little. I would reference go to the J.J. Abrams Star Trek just because I'm a younger dude. That's what I watched. I love that trilogy. But I think the Enterprise is a great example, which is very similar to the USS Enterprise from World War II. But to get off of that just a little bit, you kind of talked about the
Real quick, I don't mean to interrupt you, Kyle, but I gotta say that my dad is a huge Star Trek fan, and like almost as a like to rebel against it, I never watched those.
Okay.
So the fact that you made that comparison is incredible.
Yes, sir. I would strongly advise. Did he like the new Star Treks?
I think he liked them all. He's
Okay,
like,
good.
like in his mid 60s, but he like has like the yellow shirt and the red shirt and the blue shirt or whatever with the
Okay.
thing. Like he's a real nerd, who I love. But I'm definitely gonna let him know that you made this reference.
My man, I absolutely love it. Now the next one, talking about a gamble, because somebody in our Discord talked about like the T.J. Watt for Terry McLaurin trade possibility, and he asked if it was a rumor, and obviously it still is a rumor. But my question that I would bring up to you, Sam, is what's more likely, that Terry gets traded or Terry gets 34 plus mil a year?
Um, Kyle, I'm gonna keep it real with you, man. So since I've gotten this new job, 2 weeks ago, I am not as tapped in on the Terry
Okay.
situation as I used to be. My colleague Nikki Javala does great work, but to me, like, unless something has drastically changed in the last 2 weeks, like I would be shocked if they traded Terry. Like,
Thank
yes,
you.
like they probably don't want to. Pay him at the absolute top of the receiver market because they want to do other things and they want to build a complete roster. And Terry is, going to be 30 this fall. But to me, like, he is so many important things to this team. He has obviously a great rapport with Jaden. Like, I would be shocked if they traded him, particularly coming off this year, particularly, with the goodwill of the fan base. Like, Adam Peters wants to win, and I think that Terry's stature and his like the good guyness that he has is maybe not as important as it was in 2022 when Ron Rivera was like trying to like stop everything from falling down around the
Right.
franchise. But I do still think it's important, and he's a great player, and you never want to trade your like young quarterback's top option.
Absolutely. I remember equating that 2022 year to Rivera being a boat captain and it's on fire, just trying to make sure that it's still intact so they can meet land somewhere, which obviously coincides with what you're saying here. But the next question I had for you, I asked this to Anthony Armstrong last week, and he said his answer was Terry McLaurin. But what is one player Washington cannot risk of losing? Besides Jaden, of course. I
I'm
thought,
gonna say like it's not Jaden, right? Because like that's he's the whole deal. Terry's a really good answer. Um, I mean, I think Anthony probably pegged it to go a little different. Um, I think you could argue. I think you could argue Bobby or Frankie.
okay.
In the middle of that defense. I think they're going to be really important to getting that thing right and playing the style of defense they want to play this year. Be more aggressive. And there's a lot of pieces in the defense that you want to come together. Trey Amos, obviously, Marshawn Lattimore. You need him to be better. This is like not exactly the answer to your question, but something that I have been thinking about is Zach Ertz. Because if
Hmm.
you look at the targets from last year, he had 90 of them. And when you look at them, like, like he was a non-factor when it came to Yak. Like he would get
Right.
it and fall down. But he was so, so valuable for Jaden because like he got open and he was where he needed to be. And like in clutch situations, third and fourth downs, like if you had to move the sticks, like, obviously famously against Pittsburgh, he did not get across or the ref said he didn't get across the line.
Good
But like
correction there.
but 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 he was incredibly valuable. And so to me, the question going into this year with Debo now is does Zach and Ben Sinnott's in year two and
Right.
Luke McCaffrey's in year two. Can he be the guy? Like I'm very curious. Does Zach I think he probably cannot get 90 targets again, but can he maintain like that level of rapport with Jaden? Does someone step up? Zach, I think is like 34 now, so like, or yeah, can he keep his body like where it needs to be?
Right.
I'm very fascinated by Zach Ertz because he was instrumental last year, and I wonder if they'll either replace him or if his role will just diminish, or if he can keep defying expectations, like do it again.
My man. Now, with you, you talked about it. You obviously deserve the promotion that you got, covering
Appreciate it.
nationally for the sports, Sam. And you've given us so much of your time over the years. It's been a lot of fun to get to know you. A very personable guy you are, and you work hard, and you obviously resonate with a lot of the fan base. But like your time here in Washington was was not boring to say the least for you. Um, if you could just talk about your time in Washington and possibly your favorite memory here.
Appreciate you, Kyle. It's been really, you know, awesome to come on the show, and to get to know you and the mics. And as I said on Twitter to Mike Hall or Mike Reed, like I remember like being in an episode once and he made a joke and I was like, shoot, I cannot laugh at whatever he just said because like I would get in trouble. But no, it's been this has been really cool. The Mike like you asked me this before the show and you were like giving me time and a heads up to like think about it and I appreciate that. But there's like still so many options. And I think that like my first memory like is like I went out to dinner with some friends of mine in Alexandria the night but like I had just gotten this job. It was March 2020 and I was like, "Oh, like I'm going to go down and see Ron Rivera's like press conference next day. I'm going to meet him for the first time." And my friend was like, "No, you're not." And I was like, "Why?" And he slid his phone across the table, and it was like the NBA cancels its season because of this the coronavirus.
Oh no.
And I was like, "Shoot!" And then like over the summer, I'm home and I like go hiking on the Appalachian Trail in Maine with my dad, and like we were going backpacking for a couple days, which is something we've always done. And I text the head of PR, Sean. I'm like, "Hey, like." I'm gonna be off the grid for 2 days. Anything I gotta worry about? And he's like, "Nah, man, like don't worry about it." Um, and I got off the mountain and I had like 1,000 unread emails because like the team had retired the name Redskins, like it was just like uh like those two things, like this job, man, was never, ever, 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 ever normal.
Right.
Talking to the DEA, talking to the FBI, talking to, like investigators, in Congress. Like, I think probably honestly, one of my favorite memories was, right around last Christmas. Like I care so much and reported so much on the stadium. And finding out, oh, like Maryland wants F-16 fighter jets in exchange for the stadium. Like that's like you couldn't make that up.
Right.
And so like it's after midnight on a Friday, and you watch Chuck Schumer like standing in the U.S. Senate, and like I was not a politics guy before this. I like didn't really know that much about politics before I moved to D.C. And I learned a lot of it through reporting on the stadium, and then seeing Chuck Schumer stand in the Senate and be like, this bill that like people had talked about for a decade and a half, like boom, like DC now has control of the RFK Stadium site, and it's realistic. Like, it's like storybook stuff, man. I feel like incredibly lucky, honestly, to have covered like an insane 5.5 years that was so transformational for this
Right.
franchise.
Dude, you're not freaking kidding. And it sucks to see you leave now because like obviously throughout the years and like obviously you talked about RFK deal and everything like that. Like that you talked about transformation process. We really are growing up as an organization. But with you bringing it up, I do have to ask you, like with your very expert knowledge on the matter, there's been, I warned about this months ago that they were going to make this a little hard and that people were going to lose the emotion of it all, the excitement. Oh, maybe it won't happen. Excitement, maybe it won't happen. What is your pulse on the matter right now?
Kind of similar to the question about Terry. Like I'm not tapped in on this
I got you.
as I used to be, and I would encourage everyone to read my colleagues Megan Flynn, Jenny Gathright, and Nikki as they report on this stuff. But I mean, like I would be surprised if it doesn't get done.
There you go.
Still, I mean, this is like the team wants to be here. The city wants them here. The city council is like gonna, make changes and try to get the best deal for the taxpayer possible, as they should, in the same way that the team should push for their best deal possible. Like this makes a lot of sense. Like both sides are just like, we want the best deal for our constituency, whether it be the other owners or the taxpayers. And like, but I just cannot like, what is the alternative? Like Josh Harris says we're going to build in Maryland. Like Virginia does not even have the legislative infrastructure like necessary. Like that's
Right.
it's just to me it is an outlandish concept to imagine that this ends any other way other than them getting a deal done in DC.
Okay, I'm glad that thank you. I know you haven't for the past 2 weeks. Probably been a whirlwind for you. But that being said, have they has the Washington Post promoted anybody or like slid anybody over to your duties?
Yeah, so we actually have a job posting open.
Okay,
So I think we're soliciting applications right now. Um, to try to find out like who's going to replace me on the beat. Obviously, Nikki's going to be there and do great work. And I'm sure they'll find someone great to replace me as well.
I got you. But with your new job, you're covering sports. It's not. Is it just purely the NFL or is it going to be widespread?
Anything. I'm
Really?
sure that I'll write my fair share of NFL stories just because like that's what I've spent so much of, 6 out of the last 7 years of my life I've spent focused on the NFL. And but really this job, one of the things I think is really exciting is, they want me to be like really tapped into the national conversation. What are people talking about and how do we advance the ball? And whether that be football or youth sports or something else totally random, like it's really exciting to me. It's just a new challenge.
Mm.
And I'm someone who, like I'm just always ready to like keep growing and keep learning new skills and I don't know exactly like where we're gonna land, but it's a really fun idea.
If you keep going about it with the attitude that you have, Sam, you'll be perfectly fine, my
I
friend.
appreciate you. I
Uh,
appreciate it,
I
man.
do. I do have to ask you who. I know the easy answer would probably be Terry, but of the players that you covered over the years, who did you have? Not maybe the most respect, but like the most fun that you were able to talk to.
Oh man, that's a really good and also difficult question. I mean, Terry is up there in terms of just like how quality of a person he is in dealing with the media. Um, I always had a great time with they sat in like the corner of the locker room, but backup DNs, James Smith Williams and Casey Toohill, like those guys were always cracking jokes and John Allen was over there and when Chase Young was sitting back there, like it was just like if you walked over there, like you were walking into the Lions den and they were gonna give you a hard time about something or like I remember, I had a pair of J's on and I walked over there and one of them was just like absolutely ripping me for like having like I tied it with the bunny ears and they were like bro like they were just like merciless and I like my shorts were too short like it felt like they like they were just always having a good time and I would also say like Heineke man like Heineke was as close to like you and I are ever gonna get to being in the league. Like he was so
Right.
normal. I remember that video came out where he was like doing dip with like fans after a training camp practice. Like he was just like it was just like all quarterbacks by nature are just like like closed off. Just
Right.
like, you got to be the guy. You
Right.
got to like stand apart. And he was as normal as they can. Like, remembered your name, asked how you were doing, would just shoot the shit. Like, he was great. And I'm trying to think. Like, I've always had good like conversations with Quan Martin, with John Bates. Like, those are two solid dudes. Um, I mean, Jeremy Reeves, obviously, his story is, very inspiring. I'm like thinking about like when you walk in the locker room, it's like the receivers to the left, then the running backs, um, then the quarterbacks going around the room, then D end, then safeties, linebacker, safeties, uh,
And this is in the stadium
oh,
locker room, right?
O line. No, this is the locker room in Ashburn.
Okay. Okay.
O line, safeties, linebackers, then tight ends. And so, yeah, there's just I don't know, man. Like it was really fun to be in those locker rooms and just kind of experience and hear about the things that like they were thinking about and building like real relationships with them. Austin Seibert and Tyler Ott and Tress Way, like the specialists were like quirky and had a lot of takes. I mean Sam Cosmi and Andrew Wiley, Nick Gates, Nick Allegretti, like all the O line. Like I loved hanging out with them. Big Nick Allegretti's a big coin collector. Just like getting to know guys on like a real human level. Like Nick Allegretti like took kids like to the treasury to see like this the like to see like the coins that they collected.
No way.
Um, yeah, so I mean just like getting to know people on like a real human level was cool.
I knew that Wiley was a big Pokemon guy. I remember that after we signed him. So everybody has their little quirks. That being said, I got to put you on the spot and ask you of your colleagues. I know you spent a lot of time with Nikki, and obviously you're gonna pick Nikki as always. But who is your favorite hangout with around the beat?
Um, oh, that's a great question. I mean, like, if we're talking all time, like Pete Haley and Matt Paris,
Okay.
are like those are my boys to this day. Like, we're still in a group chat that's like very active. Um, Time, like Kime, man, he would always like say, "Oh, you should come over to the house." Like, we'll grill peaches or whatever his thing was that he would do, and then he'd cancel last minute. So that's classic Kime, like just so fake. Not really about it. Um, but no, I mean, like that's the thing is like, in that room there were like Donna Hopkins, yeah, man, like we used to go back and forth like shooting water bottle in the trash can and Candy Waller, like there's like way too many people to name. Everybody in that room, it was a great energy in there.
It definitely was. You could definitely feel it. I know what Kime tweeted out about you when you left, and obviously we all know you guys are very close, and you guys have a good time,
Of
of
course.
course. And I do think it's hilarious that the DNs were making fun of you for your Jordans, because like in construction, that means that they like you. If they didn't say anything to you and they said something when you left, that's when it's bad news for you, Sam. With that being said, but
That being said, I no longer do the bunny ears. Like the bullying worked.
that's exactly. Look, there's people who make the argument that bullying at times is positive in a way. It just depends on how much is being done and if it's in a very bad way. But in that circumstance, yes, it definitely helped. But let's kind of talk about. I know that you have been able to be for the past 2 weeks or whatever, but the NFC Championship game changed things, Sam. In my personal opinion, I think it's Super Bowl or bust. What do you say?
I don't think it's Super Bowl or
Okay.
bust. I think I think that like Super Bowl or bust, like that's the expectations are higher for sure. Like it's not just getting the playoffs, it's now like go make noise in the playoffs. I totally agree.
Yeah.
But like if they get back to the NFC Championship game and they run into, let's say Detroit is as good this year as they were last year and they're not injured, or Philly, gets back there with their like monster team, like you have a chance now. You should expect to be there, but I don't think it's Super Bowl or bust.
Okay.
I still would hesitate to go that far.
All right. And then for the second year guys, you kind of talked about them a little bit. Who do you, just based on circumstances surrounding, who do you of the second year guys do you think is going to take a big step this season?
Ooh. It's a great question. I'm intrigued. Like I think Johnny Newton like should be better. I think they would like him, to be better. Um, particularly, in the run. I know he's not necessarily always there to be against the run, but like they talked about him as a true three down player. That's why, they liked him so much in the draft. Ben Sinnott, I'm very curious. What does his route running look like? Can he, create separation? He's a guy who obviously is super athletic, and they used him on motion. When they did use him, they used him on motion to try to help give him a running start because he has such great burst. Luke McCaffrey, I want to know, like, is it real?
Mm,
And like Mikey Sanders still, I think it's real. I think he's going to continue to build. But like Luke McCaffrey, like, what's the deal? Like, they were really high on him. Got 3 targets in week 1, and then never, had more targets than that. Um, so I want to know, like, is he going to be a reliable piece of this offense? They seem to be optimistic, but it's the offseason. Um, and a guy who not to disrespect anyone else by skipping them, but a guy who they seem really high on that came up like seemed to be top of mind during camp or during mini camp for coaches was Tyler Owens.
mm.
I don't know if he carves out a role at safety or if he's still more of a special teams ace, but they really like him. He was a guy that seemed to really like pop for them. And so Tyler Owens, I think, is going to be a big part of this team moving forward.
I would absolutely love to hear that. It's been one of my questions because obviously they brought in Harris for that safety
Mhm.
room after losing Jeremy Chin. But like when typically, like with Anthony Armstrong and other professionals, they typically get their foot in the door by proving on special teams and then kind of get more responsibility. And I know Joe Witt talked about Jeremy Reeves getting more snaps as well. So maybe they have like a defensive line type of rotation at safety based on what comes down the line. Did you, Sam? Did you hear about that George Pickens thing recently? Where he had a youth like camp scheduled before he was traded and then last minute backed out on it. Did you hear about that?
Oh,
So Pat Fryermuth and other Steelers like took over for it because he canceled on them last minute. So just between you and I, you should text Kime and tell him you're going to call him Pickens from now on for me. All right. Now the last question that I have for you, last
absolutely
one.
doing that.
Um, in regards to Jaden Daniels and just the overall state of the team, did they do enough this offseason to help with the expectation? Like I know I said Super Bowl or bust, but honestly, like they have to continue building on what they have done, right? And you don't want that to be a flash in the pan. Did they do enough by going to get Laramie Tunsil, by adding Debo Samuel, by going and get Connerly and then Amos?
So I think that they did everything they could in a responsible way. Like you were aggressive to go add veterans to help right now. Laramie Tunsil is still one of the best, if not the best, left tackle in the league. Connerly, they really solidified the offensive line. Like they want to protect Jaden. They gave him, an easy button, an underneath, dump
Mm-hmm.
off guy in Debo. And I think that his ability to create yak is going to make it so that Jaden doesn't have to feel like he has to do everything in this offense. Um, so yeah, I do think they did enough. I mean, enough is like a subjective
Right.
word. But for me, like in my evaluation, I would say yes. I think they did enough. I think they put him in position to go have success. Is this roster complete? No. Like they still need an edge. They still need an elite edge rusher. Is the and they could like have depth other places, and they would still want more upside at other positions. But like given the constraints that he had, did Adam Peters do a good job? I would say yes. And now the players have to go out and execute.
Absolutely. And it's crazy to send you off now, Sam, after all these years. And just the state of the team, that coming out with the Bobby Beathard draft room that I actually worked on. I helped construct some of it. And that was an absolute honor. I actually drove out here from Delaware just to go back to do it. But it's crazy to see where the team is headed as well as you, sir. Because I'm not kidding, man. You really were a lot of fun to interview. Like when we first got you on from the Post, it was almost like kind of like thinking like it was like going to be like kind of like uptightness type of, just because of the pedigree of the Washington Post. But you did not come in with that sort of attitude at all. And even though when Reed was cracking jokes that he shouldn't have been doing, I remember thinking to myself inside, I was like, oh no, like he's not going to come back now. Oh gosh.
No, I mean, the post is really just made up of people like me, and I think that like I'm glad that you say that because like I want people to understand like I totally understand like to kind of make a little pivot real quick like trust in legacy media is at like an all-time low, and I understand like why people are skeptical of corporations and faceless things, and so like to me like I don't want people to necessarily like think like, oh, like the Washington Post TM or whatever. Like it's me, it's Sam. Like I'm doing the reporting. Like I'm watching the film on Jade and I'm breaking it down with you and Mike and like that's what I want people to like take away from this. So it means a lot that you would say that and have me on and I like I don't want to gas you up too much, but like really, it's been an absolute pleasure, being on here with you guys, and I've had a lot of fun. Like this, like you guys are, like you're true fans, like this, like you love this team because like this is your squad, and you're gonna always ride with them, and you want to like have smart, informed conversations about them, and like whether it's you guys or whether it's like fans in the parking lot that I've run into, or people in the stadium or that I've seen like the airports, like it's a it's a strong, resilient fan base, man, that's been through so much. And so I'm like stoked And I'm not dying. I'm not gonna be gone forever. I'm sure I'll be around at, at points. But like seeing the people, especially the people who have stuck with it through absolute, hell and back, to come out and be like, wow, we have a franchise quarterback and a real shot to like go win a championship. Like it doesn't get much better than that. I'm so excited for you guys.
Well, I appreciate that, Sam, and we're all pinching ourselves. It seems like a dream at this point, just seeing where this franchise was. Because Reed made the inappropriate joke way before the Me Too movement, saying that I think it was after the L.A. basketball team guy, the
First,
clip the
Donald Sterling.
yeah, Sterling. He made a comment that we should dress Reed up in a wig and try to get a lawsuit against Snyder to get him out of there. Because we were kind of thinking to ourselves, like, dude, he's young. He's not going to be selling it anytime soon. Like, we're going to be stuck with this forever. And it's just crazy to see that when that garden gets ripped up, some new flowers boom immediately and often. And it's not so that, like, it's obviously for a fan base, it's surreal, man. And I'm glad that we got to experience it with somebody like you. Who took out some time for us to talk with us, to hear our bad takes and everything, but also to help inform us, because that obviously is one of my biggest bulletin points for this show. It's just making sure that not only are we having a good time of talking, but we're learning something as well. We'd like to be constructive at some point. But Sam, I can't thank you enough, man. I'm not sure if this is the final time, based on what's going to happen in the future, but for the foreseeable future, man, I wish you the best of luck, dude. God bless you. Thank you for everything you've done for us and the team, and continue kicking ass. All right.
Man, I appreciate you, and I'm sure we'll have another episode at some point.
I,
So we'll look forward to that.
I will, my man. I appreciate you, Sam. Have a great night, sir.
You too. Thanks.
All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Sam Fortier. Always appreciate Sam's time. It's gonna be sucks to see him leave, man. But real quick to wrap this up, I just want to answer some fan questions that were submitted. And this first one was submitted by the Colonel. He said Rico Street Scores has recently been excited about Javon Kinlaw, Ronnie Goldman, and Deron Payne. He believes they could be the run-stopping defensive tackles to elevate Saquon Barkley's threat. Do you share his enthusiasm? I mean, of course I do, because they added some meat to the interior, right? And but that being said, Deron Payne was on the team last year. You can make and look, I know Joe Witt and company are very excited about him and what he has come into the offseason looking like, of course. But we do have to put that caveat in there. That being said, they did I trust exactly whatever the heck they want to do. Because going into last offseason, they didn't have much history with this team. After a full year, they have a very good grasp on what's on their team and what is needed. So the fact that they did add these guys tells you they feel really good about what they're doing. And given that they had a small sample size to work with going into last season and how that season played out, I'd be willing to bet that we should give them the benefit of the doubt, regardless of the moves of what what podcasters like myself have to say about them. I do share his enthusiasm. My only concern, Colonel, is the balancing scale, right? Of saying we're putting too much investment into run stopping and not much of being able to solidify the pass rush. Is that going to be the issue, right? And that's my kind of concern, but we'll see how that plays out. There's a lot. We've been seeing these arguments all over our Discord. Arch brought this up about saying Super Bowl teams, are they known to have an elite pass rusher on them, and typically it is a rotation of guys. And so, with that being said, I would say that we are very excited for what they have added in Javon Kinlaw and Eddie Goldman and others. Now, the next question was submitted by James Bonato on Instagram. He said, you mentioned in the last show about you being a linebacker coach for a middle school team. Therefore, I ask you this. Facing the Eagles, I'm guessing we will stack the box, regardless of whether we are using a 3-4 or 4-3 to address Barkley, or maybe even a 5-2. It is being touted that we have reshaped our D-line to address this. If I were Philly, I'd be trying to counter this by going to the air. With a healthy Lattimore, a promising Amos, and an apparent dependable Sainristil, do we have what it takes to contend with the Eagles? Please play Joe Witt Jr. to answer this. Yeah, because there is that element of it, right? I just talked about it with the Colonel's question in the sense that you're adding so much up front to nullify the run, and you're divulging those assets into it, right? Almost think about it in like a war kind of scale, whereas like let's think about World War II, right? Like you're adding so much infantry into the equation that now the enemy is going to have an ability to fire artillery on them, right? And that's when it comes into, all right, we need our air to come in and take out that artillery to protect the infantry. And that's what you're kind of looking at here. And that's what the Amos adding is. That's what having Lattimore is being able to stop that ability to throw the ball on you in those situations. That being said, the number one key is to stop the run, especially against Saquon, but also is to get after Jalen. Because Jalen himself, as much as we love to give credit to Jaden for being able to extend plays and everything, Jalen Hurts does that as well and being able to bring him down. He's a thick dude, and like Reed likes it. So you have to be able to get him down, and that's the big cog in all this. Is if he can't look at A.J. Brown, how can he throw accurately to A.J. Brown? Keeping his eyes down, getting him pressured. And that is something that is to be concerned about. But adding with what they had on paper, and we have to be comfortable and safe with saying that, what they've added on paper is great. We have to see how it works. I trust what they're doing. I trust what Joe Witt wants to do. Stopping the run is obviously something that is necessary. But I also believe that those guys working in unison, working as one, is the i.e. number one. You don't need absolute ballers at secondary, honestly, on your team. We proved that last year. You just need a handful of guys to be in unison, to have great relationship, to work together for a common goal. And do they have that? We will see that this season without a doubt. Now, the next question was submitted by Arch in the Discord. Thank you, James. I appreciate it. So I got to head to church here in a minute. We got something come down the pipeline with video, so we're going to check that out. The question from Arch is, this is from Tim Towner. Is anyone going to attend either the preseason game versus Cincinnati or Baltimore on the 23rd? No, I won't be going to those. Probably Hall might be. I'm not sure. I have to ask with him. We're planning on going to week 1. Burrows had a ticket for us. I thought it was 2. It was only 1. So I got to see, because I always want to go with Hall, man, and be able to see the UK boys and their families. But for the preseason, most likely not, just based on how things are looking, the time of them. I would also love to bring my family with me for one of these games. I know I went with my wife last year to the Atlanta game. Would love to be able to bring my son and my daughter to be able to experience a Commanders game in sight, because it's going to be hard. I honestly feel like they won't be really bought into it until they go to a game. Last question from Deluxe. What is something that you think the coaches learned in year 1 that they will change in year 2? Ooh, that's a dang good question, Arch. The one thing I would say that they're going to change. Ooh, now I got to think about it. What they learned in year 1 that they'll change in year 2. I think the Tampa Bay game, the halftime adjustments with Lattimore was evident. And I think they already knew that going into that game, but they also wanted their guy to be comfortable. They knew he was a dog-ass competitor, and they wanted to abide by that. But I think that they ultimately learned that they can't have too much confidence in things, or to allow things to be as easy as they are. And so to speak, and what I'm speaking in reference to is the run game. Like, they were very top 5 against the passing, right, in pass yards. But run really bled them dry. And especially with putting guys on the field like Percy Butler late in those games, or Saquon just rips it off, I think that we're close to being able to contend with Philly in the sense of going all 60. And I think that we're there and we can do that easily. It's just not allowing ourselves to be out of control to the point where it does fall apart for us. And so I think they've learned, first and foremost, is just having the trust and just implementing that trust in the whole team to know that we got it, we're going to be okay. If there's anything they're going to change, I don't think there is that much to change, because based on the results, right? But if there's anything to change, it's your willingness to be able to get after the passer. And I think that is something that they're going to change going into year 2. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. If you made it this far, you're a frickin' champion. I can't thank you enough. Thank you to Sam and all of his time. Thank you to James. Thank you to Colonel. Thank you to Arch and Tim for your questions. I can't thank you guys enough. We'll see you guys again on Sunday in a couple days. I wanted to interview Sam. It's been a while. All right, everybody, we'll see you then. Washington football. Woo! What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo, or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.